So what I was told growing up the whole time was that I was given up for adoption, particularly because, my family didn't have a whole ton of money. And that's a pretty common story from what I was, told growing up. And after doing some searching and some other things, my parents were able to get in contact with the adoption agency and everything else, and my birth family. And really, there's two sort of conflicting stories as to what happened, and there's always two sides to every story. And really, what it was is that my father was, I guess you could say, a little abusive and an alcoholic, and at the same time, my mother came from a family with money and was quite a bit younger than my dad at the time, and he also was incredibly poor. So I don't know why or what the reasons specifically were they split up, but you have a good idea. And I was told that my mother dropped me off at the adoption agency, and really that wasn't true. It was actually my dad's sister that did it, posing as my mother. In all aspects, though, it was probably a good thing that it happened. Well, from what I understand, I was born in '86, and about a year and a half afterwards, I was adopted. Somewhere in that time frame, I'm not real sure, because I guess I never really memorized those dates like some of the other adoptees. Your adoption date and how old you were specifically. It's just about this age is sort of what I remember. And during that time frame, I didn't even know I was in a foster home. I sort of forgot about that. I know when I looked through like my baby books and stuff that my mom put together, I remember seeing sort of a photo of me with a lady, but I didn't really understand that might have been my foster mom. So I went through the adoption agency. I was placed in foster care, and then I don't know if I went back or if I was adopted out of foster care. I guess that's never really a question I asked. And after that, I guess I came to the U.S. So I grew up in small town America with a town of about 18,000 people. Hasn't really grown much in the last 27, 28 years. And maybe it's about 20,000 people now. Starbucks was a real big deal when it came, and then Starbucks left. And then Super Walmart was also really amazing when it got there. So you can imagine how many other people that were like me lived in the town that I lived in. So my parents were really, really supportive people. My mom made it very known that they wanted me and that I was here for a purpose, and that it was better that I was here because of my family in Korea not able to afford things for me. So I always grew up knowing that I was wanted, loved, and cared for. My dad actually was in the military and a few other things, and when I came around, he was done with all of that, and he actually had his own construction company that he started. So he worked a lot. He wasn't always around, but when he was around, it was when it was most important. My family was a pretty religious family, so real big into the church. And my dad took the firm stand at the head of the household, and my mom was always there for moral support and really just took care of everything inside the home. When I was in boarding school, sort of out of pure spite for my parents, and I'm sure they probably knew that going through this, but on the way there, it wasn't the best way for me to leave, so I found out after a date with my girlfriend at the time, came home, all my stuff was in the guest room sort of getting packed, and I was like, what's going on? My mom's like, well, you're going to school somewhere else tomorrow, and I was like, oh, all right. And it was one of those situations where either I could leave by myself or they could send someone to come get me. And so I went to high school the next day, told everybody goodbye, and I just sort of dipped out. And on the way to school in Indiana, I actually pretty much told them that I didn't want them to be my parents anymore, and said that, I want you to find my not adoptee, but birth parents. And it was pure spite and just mean words that I said that out of, and I'm sure that they felt that way too. And they took it in a much more positive way than I think, probably after some time, but they actually went out and found my birth parents for me. So it was one of the nicer things that they've ever done. And so I went to Korea through one of the trips through the adoption agency and toured around and stuff, and it was a really good experience for me. After that, though, I pretty much lost contact with everybody. And I don't really think about it too much. It's one of those things where growing up, I thought, especially after I came back, so about 19, 20, same time I moved out, I thought, you know what, it would be nice if I could talk to them again, but it's not going to change who I am. There's other adoptees that I know of specifically that go see their parents on a semi-regular basis every other year. And I think it would be nice, but I still am who I am. And the biggest part of finding out who I was knowing where I came from. And I feel that seeing those people and understanding why and hearing it come from their own mouth really, I guess, brought closure to that part of my life. So for me, I still think about it, and I definitely understand why a lot of people think about it more often than I do. But now it's sort of like a fleeting thought that doesn't always cross my mind anymore. So when I went to Korea, I went with, I think it was Eastern Social Welfare. That's who I went back with. I went with a lot of adoptees. It was a really interesting trip, and my parents and I didn't really have the best relationship still. So they actually asked if I wanted them to go with me. And, I'm a social person and I didn't really know anybody, so I didn't feel comfortable really going by myself, so I told them to come with. And it was a really good experience for both of us, or not both of us, but all three of us, because it was one of those times for us to not only bond, like as a family, but also see other people that were in the very same situation. So before I went, because I knew that my father was out there, my mother was out there, when I was going, we were really unsure as to whether or not I'd be able to meet my birth mom. My dad pretty much said, yes, let's do this. So I was going in a very interesting spot where I was going to meet my family, and I think only one other person was going to do that. When I went, we had 2 coach buses full of adoptees and their parents and their families, so it was a large group that we went with. We traveled all over Korea, stayed in a lot of hotels, partied a lot, have a lot of good stories about that. And it was really interesting because not only was it educational and we got to see a lot of the things that we wanted to see, but while we were there, I met my father, I met my grandma, my aunts, and uncle, my foster mom, my mom. And when I met my mom, it wasn't under the best circumstances, I guess, because it was still where she was afraid to let anybody know about me. She got remarried, and when I was there, I have a stepbrother that was, I think, 4 years old at the time. And it was still one of those situations where if her husband found out about me, a lot of things in her life could go very poorly. And I definitely understand that, not only was it rough for you earlier having me, but now that I'm trying to come back into your life possibly, I don't want to make your life any harder than it was the first time. So for me, it was just nice to see who she was. Today, I'm 27 years old. Single, had quite a few different failed relationships. I was actually engaged more than once. Actually engaged once, didn't work out so well. Own a house, work full time. I actually manage a retail location for a wireless company. I do firearms training, I own a wedding business, and I'm a board member on a nonprofit for Korean adoptees. So to me, I'm incredibly busy, and it's one of those things where I feel that I guess I'm fairly successful for the age group that I'm in. And being a Korean adoptee, I don't really know if it's affected me that much, specifically in how I see myself valued in success. I actually see my value of success as to where I'm at based on my father, honestly. He was incredibly driven and made a good amount of money doing what he did and doing something that he knew he was good at. And I would like to be in the same boat. That has nothing to do with being adopted. So the relationship with my adoptive parents, my mom passed away a couple years ago. So I really talked to my dad a lot about everything. Actually, I called him on the way here. I said, hey, I'm doing that interview thing today. He's driving through Minnesota right now with his brother. I feel that I have a pretty open and honest relationship with them. When I was growing up, one of my sisters was the closest to me. And we would call, I'd call her specifically when I was having a rough time with my parents. And then I know sometimes I'd get dropped off just to get out of the house and hang out with her and her husband and just sort of be out so my parents could probably take a break from me. And I think I have a great relationship with my family. I mean, I try to talk to my sisters probably about once every other week just to make sure, go on family vacations, email back and forth. So I think it's one of those things where it's a good family dynamic, and I never felt like I was out of place at all ever. On Facebook, the massive social media that it is, somehow I got attached to a couple different Korean adoptee groups. And I don't know how long I was in that group. I'm sure I was in there for more than a couple of years. And I want to say last year I started seeing a bunch of posts from there. And I was like, I should probably just either take it off my news feed because it's getting annoying because I'm seeing all this stuff now, or I should probably go actually click on the group and sort of see what it is. So I clicked on the group and I went to one of their events not knowing anybody. And it was one of those things where you sort of felt at home because everybody sort of welcomed you with open arms, sort of the same way that the Hmong community did. And it was almost like I've described it to other people that I've brought out and met and said, come to this group. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of people that are like you, and it's sort of interesting. I describe it to specifically the guys as, it's like a fraternity in a college. Once you're in, the secret handshake or whatever it is, you're part of a brotherhood. It's sort of cool because you can go anywhere you want and someone will be willing to go eat lunch with you or go hang out. And even though they have no idea who you are, just because you're a Korean adoptee and you're part of the group, they will just hang out with you. For instance, I went to California pretty recently, and I went with two girls that are Korean adoptees, and one of them I've only known for a couple months, and I met her once. And then the other one I've known for a couple months also, but I met her like a handful of times. We flew to California on the same flight to stay with a guy that I've never met, and that they, I guess, went to one of the adoptee gatherings somewhere. I think it might have been like ICA or something. And so yeah, we stayed there, met up with some other people in LA that I've never met, and I think they've only met a few times before too. And it's just one of those things where if you looked at us, you would never know that we have only known each other for a couple hours for some of us. That was one of the things that one of the adoptees said, have you guys met before? Like, you guys do this all the time? No, this is the first time I've met any of you actually. So it really is that feeling of like belonging and like a fraternity, I guess is the fastest way I can describe it to anybody, or a sorority. You just belong once you're there. And, there's a couple different groups. There's a social group from Minnesota. There's one that's more educational. That's the one that I'm on the board for. It's an educational and social group also, but and it's just a lot of fun. Quite honestly, I feel that that's brought me into more of the Korean culture than anything, like celebrating the holidays, eating more of the food regularly. Again, thinking about trying to learn Korean. I tried once and it wasn't really good. I didn't do very well at all, actually. And it's a good experience. It's a really good experience. And I know that some adoptee groups, when you sort of search through them on Facebook, there's millions of them, there's hundreds of them. And some of them you can tell in about 5 minutes that this is going to take a turn for negative town pretty quickly, and everybody's sort of in a place where they just want to vent about how they feel about being adopted in a negative way. And I guess I found, luckily enough for me, a group that's more positive about being adopted and understanding that it's a good thing, regardless of the bad situations that you've been in or the bad situation you came from.